At my sister's wedding, Dad exposed. Only blood counts. What I discovered online was incredible. Clara sat at the back of the church, holding her breath as the vows hung in the air. Her sister's wedding was supposed to be a celebration, a joyous occasion filled with laughter and love among family. Yet, as her father stood abruptly, his voice cutting through the soft whispers and music, she felt the ground beneath her shift. "Only blood counts," he declared, the words resonating ominously, echoing through the ornate chapel like a gunshot. Guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, faces taut with disbelief. Clara's heart sank. The moment she had envisioned was shattered, and she was left speechless, caught in the churning chaos of mixed emotions. Days passed since the wedding, yet Clara felt like she was walking through a haze. Each morning in her small university office, surrounded by papers about ethics and integrity, the chasm between her father's fierce loyalty to blood and her mother's unyielding passion for nurturing those in need grew wider. She thought about her mother's legacy and dedication to helping underprivileged students, often reminiscing about the late-night conversations they'd shared. But since the wedding, a seed of doubt had taken root. What if her father's principles were not as unshakable as she believed? Driven by a blend of anger and confusion, Clara dove into her mother's old emails. What started as a means to uncover a cherished memory spiraled into an unexpected revelation. Her mother had built an online initiative that thrived quietly but surely, aimed at providing resources to disadvantaged students. Clara's heart raced as she sifted through contracts and consent forms, unraveling a tapestry of hidden success buried deep under family secrets. Why had her father shielded this truth, and what had happened to the flourishing project? As she grasped the magnitude of her findings, a gnawing urgency clawed at her mind. She could see how her father was driven by an unyielding belief in family loyalty, while her mother's unsung work resonated with the very values she, as a professor, had dedicated her life to preaching. Clara's internal conflict intensified, each revelation shifting the guardrails of her moral compass. Was it disloyal to stand against her father, to challenge the familial values he so highly esteemed? What about her mother's passions? Wasn't devoting her life to fairness and equity what made their family strong? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Determined yet terrified, Clara faced a crossroads. She had unearthed the truth, yet sharing it could wreak havoc on her fragile family ties. The weight of her decision pressed down like an anchor, pulling her deeper into uncertainty. As her fingers hovered over her keyboard, drafting a potential email to the local newspaper detailing her mother's legacy, doubt seeped into her mind. Would she shatter her father's world, leaving him exposed? With sudden clarity, she envisioned the moment he would discover what she planned, his face contorted in rage, piercing her with accusations of betrayal. Clara took a breath, her heart pounding in a rhythm of chaos and resolve. Just as she prepared herself to click send, her phone rang. It was her father, his voice a thunderous storm of anger, demanding to know what she was doing. Clara's heart raced as she stood on the precipice of a life-altering decision. The door to her family's hidden truths creaked open, threatening to swing wide. But would it be the start of liberation or the end of everything she had known? Clara sat in her office the next morning, heart pounding and mind racing, each tick of the clock amplifying her tension. She replayed her father's words in her mind, the raw anger coiling around her thoughts like a snake tightening its grip. She had never seen him like that, his conviction unwavering, leaving little room for contradiction. Yet here she was, besieged by the truth about her mother's work and the unshakable doubt that her father's rigid views instilled within her. Her phone lay beside her, the call from her father still echoing in her ears. What if she had taken a moment to breathe, to think through her response, instead of letting shock lead her to silence? She was gripped by the weight of inaction, and as she contemplated her options, a flicker of determination kindled within her. Clara could no longer stand as a passive observer in her family's dynamics. She needed to act, not out of rebellion, but out of a commitment to the values her mother stood for. Days turned into nights filled with research and contemplation. Clara began to meticulously document her mother's initiatives, piecing together the network of resources her mother had created. It became more than a personal project. It transformed into a mission cloaked in purpose. The hidden achievement stood as a stark contrast to her father's ideology, a testament to the love and dedication imbued in her mother's work. She felt a sudden rush of urgency, awakened by the realization that she had the power to amplify her mother's legacy. Yet the fear of confrontation loomed darker than ever. The thought of approaching her father filled her with trepidation. Would he lash out again? What if his anger shattered their already frayed relationship, leaving nothing but suspicion in its wake? Taking a breath, Clara recognized the need for a strategy. If she acted rashly, it could lead to their irrevocable rift. With clarity, she chose her next move, to confront the divide directly. She drafted an outline for a speech that presented both her mother's achievements and her father's beliefs, creating a bridge to span their opposing views. It wasn't about proving one wrong or right, it was about fostering understanding. Yet she hesitated, fingers poised above her keyboard, anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. What if he dismissed her effort outright? What if he remained entrenched in his perspective, unwilling to see the world through another's eyes? Clara's resolve wavered, and she pictured her father's face once more. The firmness in his voice, the way his words could rip through her confidence like paper. Addressing this wouldn't come without a cost. Would she lose the safety of her family's legacy by challenging her father to embrace a more expansive understanding of kinship and contribution? Clenching her fists, she steeled herself. Growth never emerged from comfort. It arose from discomfort, demands, and sometimes painful revelations. Clara resolved to create an opportunity for dialogue, an invitation for her father. She would present her research face to face, adding context and emotion to each piece of data. She wouldn't merely report the facts. She would explain their significance in the realm of her mother's dream and in her own life. As she typed the final words, her stomach twisted with anticipation. She was finally initiating a conversation that was long overdue. Before she pressed send, her thoughts spiraled into overdrive. The likely turmoil to follow, the risk of familial upheaval, but also the glimmer of possibility, a chance for healing, understanding, and vision. Setting her jaw, Clara hit send. Leaving the office, she felt a mix of despair and exhilaration wrapping around her heart. There was no turning back now. The time had arrived to confront the rift head-on, to grapple with the implications of her actions, and to reveal not just her findings, but the truth about who she had become amid the chaos. As she stepped outside, a sharp breeze hitting her face, a familiar voice called from behind. She turned, and there stood her sister, wearing a concerned expression, an unspoken question lingering in the air. Clara could feel the weight of impending confrontation drawing nearer as she prepared for the reality check that was to come. What would her sister say? How would this new chapter affect their relationship? Clara braced herself as her sister, Lily, approached, her brows furrowed with concern. The moment felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. She could see the questions swirling in her sister's eyes, a mix of curiosity and worry. What had she missed in her quest for truth? "Clara, what's going on? You've been so distant lately, and, well, you seem different," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara hesitated. How could she explain the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that had led to this moment? "I've been working on something important, something about Mom's projects." Lily's expression shifted, a hint of surprise piercing through her concern. "You mean the ones Dad always talks down? What's that about?" Clara took a deep breath. She realized she needed to be honest, to reveal the core of her mission without overwhelming her sister. "I've been digging into her work, Lily. She did so much more than we ever knew. I'm finally ready to confront Dad about it." Silence hung between them, tension crackling in the air. The weight of their father's rigid beliefs loomed over both sisters, and Clara sensed Lily's apprehension. "Are you sure that's the right move? I don't want you to ruin things between you and him." "But don't you see?" Clara pushed, her voice gaining strength. "It's not just about him. It's about understanding what Mom dedicated her life to. We can't just let it go. I need to fight for that part of her legacy." Lily's expression softened, yet still bore the marks of hesitation. "I get that, but Dad is still our dad. He loves us, even if he doesn't always show it. If you challenge him, it could get ugly." Clara felt a surge of frustration. For too long, they had walked on eggshells around their father's opinions. Why are we so afraid to voice our truth? We shouldn't have to hide behind his beliefs anymore. We've grown, Lily. We're not kids anymore. It's time to advocate for what's right, even if it means standing against him. Lily looked down, weighing Clara's words, vulnerability creeping into her features. "Maybe you're right, but I worry, I really do." Seeing her sister's uncertainty made Clara's heart ache. "You don't have to stand alone in this. We can figure it out together. I want our relationship to grow stronger from this, not divided by it." In that moment, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wanted to pave a path for both of them. Fighting for their mother's legacy wasn't only about proving their father wrong. It was about seeking clarity, connection, and understanding within their family. "Let me show you what I found," she said softly, opening her laptop to reveal her research. As Clara shared stories, statistics, and anecdotes of their mother's impact, she noticed a gradual shift in Lily's demeanor. Interest flickered behind her sister's eyes, replacing the earlier skepticism. Together, they explored their mother's life, allowing the weight of their father's shadows to recede, if only for a few precious moments. Yet a gnawing knot of dread lingered in Clara's stomach. The looming confrontation with her father was an inevitability. While Lily's growing support felt like a comforting balm, it also heightened Clara's awareness of the impending storm. Would she come to regret this daring leap into the unknown? As they bonded over the revelations drawn from their mother's work, a single thought circled Clara's mind like a predator in the grass. Was her decision the first step toward liberation, or an irreversible fracture in her family? Filled with simultaneous hope and trepidation, she turned to her sister. "Do you think you could talk to Dad with me?"
Hung in the air, resonating like the final chord of a symphony, a call to action intermingled with the haunting refrain of fear and love. Would her sister stand at her side when the moment of truth came? The tension was palpable, and as Clara awaited Lily's reply, she realized that the time for hesitation had passed. Adventure awaited, but first they had to navigate the minefield of familial ties. What awaited them on the other side? Clara's heart raced as she considered Lily's response. The stakes had never felt higher, and she could almost hear the distant roar of the confrontation ahead. Would her sister be willing to embrace the upheaval lurking on the horizon? A moment stretched long, filled with unsaid words and a flicker of determination in Clara's chest. I think I should," Lily finally murmured, vulnerability stitching her brows together. It was the answer Clara sought, yet the gravity of the situation set in, painting the air thick with unspoken fears and burgeoning alliances. "Okay," Clara replied, her voice steadier than her heart. "We can do this, together." As they plotted out their meeting with their father, Clara could feel the weight of expectation shift from her aching shoulders to a newfound camaraderie with Lily. They began to dig deeper into their mother's work, researching every aspect with a tenacity fueled by the urgency of their mission. Late nights turned into an exhilarating haze of activity. Each discovery about their mother, her resilience, her unheralded achievements, served as a banner of hope that unfurled across Clara's mind.
It was a stark reminder of everything their father had dismissed for too long. But along with this hope came an unsettling realization. Clara was becoming a version of herself she hardly recognized. She was assertive now, her advocacy emerging like a dragon breathing fire. The awakening was empowering, yet it also scared her. Who would she become if she succeeded? And if she failed? The thought of alienating her father, a man she wanted to respect, gnawed at her. Was advocating for their mother's legacy worth the emotional cost? Lily spent nights contemplating her role in this family drama, and Clara could see her sister wrestling with doubt. The next morning, they sat across from each other at the breakfast table, silence thick with indecision. Clara needed to brighten the air. "We can't back down now," she urged gently. "Our mother's passion deserves to be recognized. It's more than just us. It's about honesty, about illuminating darkness." "But facing Dad means tearing open wounds," Lily countered, her voice wavering, a calculated yet passionate discontent. "What if we do more harm than good?" Clara leaned forward, looking her sister in the eye. "Every family has wounds, but it's not right to let fear hold us back from healing. What if our fight can inspire something positive?" Lily sighed, the burden of Clara's conviction settling between them. It was a crucial moment that hung there like a spider's web, delicate and intricate. Clara realized then that this journey was about more than reconciling the past. It was an emotional excavation that demanded courage no matter the outcome. Just then, Clara's phone buzzed with an email notification, pulling her from her thoughts. A message from an academic journal about their mother's unpublished work surfaced, and Clara clicked it open. Her fingers traced over the words while her heart thumped rhythmically. It was an affirmation, a pivotal piece she had been seeking that could arm her with knowledge when they confronted their father. "This could be a game changer," Clara murmured, a slight tremor in her voice, excitement bubbling beneath her skin. "It's about time we connected the dots and showed him the truth." Lily peered curiously over Clara's shoulder, her brow dampened with increasing intrigue. "I know it'll be hard to face him, but maybe it's not just about winning an argument. It's really about getting him to understand who our mother really was." As the room buzzed with newfound energy, Clara realized the confrontation was not merely an event to dread, but an opportunity for the sisters to reclaim their mother's narrative and their own. However, Clara's gut twisted uneasily. The impending discussion would not solely be a family confrontation. It would require Clara to confront herself and her own fears. As Clara and Lily dove into research that afternoon, Clara wondered if they would emerge victorious or if they'd have to navigate the wreckage of their family, whatever the result. Questions simmered in her heart. Would they truly uncover the truth, or would their father's resistance bleed into their own convictions? The tension built as they readied themselves for the inevitable confrontation. And lingering at the edges of her consciousness was the painful thought, what else might her father reveal in that moment? Clara sat at her desk, the afternoon light spilling gently through the window, illuminating the pages strewn across the surface, a chaotic but purposeful map of her mother's life and contributions. With each revelation, she felt layers of her fear peel away, yet another layer of responsibility emerged. This journey toward unearthing the truth was becoming less of an obligation and more of a quest for her own identity. "Clara, look at this," Lily called with a mix of excitement and skepticism, pulling Clara back into reality. Her gaze landed on a piece of the research, a newspaper clipping dating back to their mother's early activism. Clara moved closer, reading about a community initiative that her mother had spearheaded, a stark contrast to the muted narrative their father had painted. "Can we really take this to Dad? What if he shuts us down?" The doubt hung heavy in the air. Clara felt the pulse of her own anxiety stab at her confidence, the relentless questioning buzzing in her mind. "We have to try," she replied, the conviction growing louder as she spoke. "Standing firm in the face of adversity is the very thing she taught us." The exchange lingered in Clara's mind as she delved deeper into the research and unearthed themes her mother had explored: resilience, the pursuit of justice, and the transformative power of truth. Where once there had been a chasm separating Clara from her mother's legacy, now there was a bridge. She was tapping into a marrow of strength she had never fully acknowledged. It was terrifying yet exhilarating, a roller coaster of self-discovery that built momentum with every piece of evidence they found. Days turned into an intense preparation process. Clara found herself pacing in her apartment, rehearsing conversations in her mind, drilling down the nuances of their mother's story. At times, she felt a soldier preparing for battle, and she questioned if she was even equipped for the emotional skirmishes laid ahead. What if I can't handle what he throws back at me, she wondered, biting her lip as she battled self-doubt. Yet during those moments of questioning, she also discovered quiet revelations. Each step uncovered a wellspring of courage she didn't know she possessed. Not relying solely on her sister's support allowed Clara a glimpse of her potential. She was beginning to believe in herself, not just as a daughter, but as an advocate. One night, just before their scheduled meeting with their father, Clara's resolve crystallized further. She practiced in front of the mirror, consciously honing her posture, her gaze unwavering. The reflection staring back at her was one of a woman who was ready, armed with the tools of her mother's narrative and a fierce loyalty to honor it. When they finally approached their father's door, the world outside seemed to fade into the background. Clara felt the familiar flicker of anxiety surge through her veins, but it was quickly tempered by a wave of determination. She glanced at Lily, and they shared a brief but electrifying nod of silent assurance. As they entered the room, Clara's heartbeat thudded in her ears. She took a deep breath, pushing her shoulders back. It was time to confront their father. Not just to advocate for their mother's legacy, but to establish their own place within their family's fractured history. "It's about more than just her, Dad," Clara began, her voice resolute yet tethered to a flicker of vulnerability. "It's about truth, and truth brings healing." But as she spoke, she noted the deep lines etched on her father's face, a man poised at the intersection of defense and denial. Clara sensed an unsettling storm brewing beneath his surface, a tension that seemed almost palpable. Just as the first wave of his reaction began to rise, a harsh truth loomed over Clara. What if this confrontation shattered her connection with him irreparably? Would her bravery expose her inner fragility instead of fortifying her resolve? The moment stretched out, teetering on a precipice. Clara realized that she was not just facing an adversary, but also wading into the murky waters of her own expectations and fears about family and legacy. The consequences of this moment would ripple far beyond the confrontation itself. Father's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something more. Was that regret, defiance, or unintended recognition? Clara's heart raced as she gripped the edges of the conversation, a feeling of both hope and dread settling in her chest as she prepared for the revelation that might follow. Would it be a breakthrough, or would they be ensnared further in the legacy of silencing? The tension in the room escalated as Clara's next words hung in the air, waiting to either inspire connection or drive an irrevocable wedge between them. She knew this moment would either solidify her journey or fracture it entirely. "Dad, what do you really want to say?" Her father's eyes narrowed slightly, a bead of sweat forming at his temple as Clara sensed hesitation ripple through him. The silence stretched taut, a string ready to snap. Clara's mind raced, grappling with the urgency of this moment. She positioned herself to listen intently, but also to assert the weight of her convictions. "What do you really want to say, Dad?" she repeated, her tone defiant yet genuine, desperately trying to connect with the man she had seen as an authority, a protector who had now become an obstacle. Every nerve ending in her body pulsed with anticipation, a mixture of fear and acceptance that whatever he might reveal could change everything. He opened his mouth, and for a heartbeat, she could hear the confusion in his breath. "You don't understand the whole story, Clara. Your mother, she wasn't a saint." There it was, a defensive preamble, an instinctive shield against vulnerability. Clara's stomach twisted. How many times had she wished, hoped even, for a softer truth? I know she wasn't perfect, Clara replied measuredly, as her heart sank at the underlying tone of betrayal. But that doesn't erase what she stood for. You're focusing on the flaws, Dad. Can't you see beyond that? He shifted his gaze, avoiding her piercing eyes, and for a moment the creased lines of his face fell into deeper shadows, casting doubt on her hope for reconciliation. There was a flicker of acknowledgement in his demeanor, but he quickly shuttered it behind a wall of defensiveness. Clara realized, not for the first time, how unwilling he had been to traverse the paths of vulnerability. We need to confront her legacy, not bury it under shame, Clara pressed. What are you so afraid of? The words hung like a challenge in the air, and Clara felt the weight of expectation on her shoulders. Finally, her father looked up, and something shifted. A faint crack formed in his composure. I'm afraid of losing you both, he admitted, his voice a rough whisper. In that moment of raw honesty, Clara perceived the battle of a man struggling with grief, loss, and a need for control. You don't have to lose us, Dad, Lily chimed in, her voice a soothing balm in the charged atmosphere. But that requires honesty, about Mom, about us. Clara's heart lifted momentarily at her sister's bravery.
But how far would their father bend? Your mother made choices, he insisted, reinforcing the defensive stance. She wasn't just an activist, she was an enigma, a constant storm. Clara felt pity surge within her. The man she had seen as a titan was merely a man grappling with shadows from the past. Looking at him, Clara realized that this encounter transcended their immediate conflict. It was a stage for healing, not just for herself, but for him too. A chance for both of them to redefine their relationship. As she searched his haunted eyes, her thoughts coalesced around the truth that courage doesn't only reside in opposition. Sometimes it underscores connection. Let's be brave together, Clara proposed, anguish softening her tone. We can honor her life, not as a saint or a sinner, but as a woman who fought for something she believed in. The air thickened with possibility or impending rejection. Clara felt the heat rise in her throat, the urge to plead for a new understanding, one that could bind them in their shared grief and confuse loyalty, in spite of their differences. It was now or never. Then, still trembling with hope and trepidation, she gathered herself for the potential fallout. Dad, what did she mean to you? Can you tell us the truth? At that question, a silence drenched in gravity settled over the room. Clara could practically feel the pendulum of emotional honesty swinging forward, waiting. Would he allow himself to reflect, to share the love lost between the lines of resentment and abandonment? As the moment settled and tension lingered palpably, she realized the journey ahead wasn't just for her mother's legacy, but a redefinition of her family altogether. Would her father finally embrace vulnerability and step into the realm of understanding, or retreat into the depths of denial yet again? Clara could only wait for his response, the truth teetering in the balance. What she sensed was a fundamental reckoning approaching, one that demanded her father to confront not only their mother's shadow, but his own legacy as well. And in that realization, Clara understood that the journey was only beginning, filled with unforeseen challenges ahead. The air thickened with tension, each second stretching uncomfortably as Clara and Lily stared at their father, waiting for a revelation that could reshape everything. He blinked repeatedly, lost in a tempest of conflicting emotions, and Clara's heart raced as a wave of anxiety washed over her. Would this be another moment swallowed by silence, or would her father finally reveal the truth he had withheld for so long? I loved your mother, he finally murmured, the weight of his confession hanging heavily in the room. There was an uncharacteristic softness in his voice that Clara had seldom encountered. But she was never satisfied. I couldn't be everything she needed. His gaze dropped, and for the first time, Clara detected a hint of vulnerability beneath the anger and pride that had always shielded him. Clara felt a ripple of understanding rush through her, awakening the parts of her heart that had long held resentment. This was not only her fight.
This was about her father grappling with an identity forged in the shadow of their mother's fervor. You weren't meant to take on all that burden alone, Dad. She chose her path. You had your own truth as well. Her words lingered in the room, softening the edges of what had been a heated confrontation. She recognized now that many of their past arguments had simply been echoes of this shared grief and the absence of open dialogue. Lily leaned forward, catching their father's gaze. Dad, we need to understand her struggles and yours, how you both intertwined. Let us in. Share those pieces with us. In a moment that felt almost sacred, Clara witnessed a transformation. The hardened lines on her father's face softened, and a flash of tenderness crossed his expression. You're right, he admitted. I built walls to protect us. I thought if I could just keep everything under control, we'd be okay. Yet Clara sensed another layer buried beneath the surface of his confession. But you didn't know how to communicate that need, did you? She probed gently. The question hung in the air, giving her father a chance to dig deeper into his own contradictions. I didn't want to admit weakness, he said, choking on the last word as it tumbled out. Clara felt a grip of compassion that pushed aside her earlier frustration. He was human, after all, and human flaws often tangled themselves within love. The conversation rolled on, revealing buried truths like layers of sediment exposed by a receding tide. Her father spoke of sleepless nights lurking in the shadows of doubt, moments when the echoes of her mother's voice spurred him into action or paralyzed him with despair. Clara's heart raced. With each story, she felt herself growing, understanding the complex artistry of their family's tapestry. In hearing her father's truths, there was a profound recognition of her own unmet desires for authenticity. She had yearned for connection that transcended their mother's legacy, a connection that could blossom in the unlikeliest of places. The narrative was shifting, the focus was turning inward. Then, as they were navigating this fragile territory of emotions, Clara's phone buzzed on the table, breaking the intimacy of the moment. She reached for it absently, and the small screen flashed a notification, an article link pertinent to their mother, potentially unveiling even more hidden complexities. Her breath caught, a mixture of excitement and apprehension slicing through the conversation. What is it? Lily asked, peering over Clara's shoulder, curiosity stirring in her expression. Clara hesitated, caught between a yearning to pull her father further into the light and the undeniable urge to uncover new truths. Her mind raced with possibilities. Would this information bring them closer or deepen divides that were only just starting to heal? Clara's resolve solidified with a sense of purpose. It's about time we uncover more of our mother's past, together. The urgency pushed Clara to tap the screen, ready to explore the implications of what lay ahead, aware it could lead down daunting paths or reveal hidden strengths. Whatever it was, the possibility of discovery crackled within her, igniting a fierce determination to pursue the truth, whatever the cost. As her father's eyes fell upon the link, she sensed the tension building again, a mixture of dread and anticipation. Would he be willing to face what their mother had truly fought for? The air hummed with questions left unanswered, a suspenseful anticipation building as uncertainty loomed. Fueled by the storm of emotions, Clara knew one thing: their journey was just beginning. Would they embrace the revelations that awaited them, or would fear lock them into the shadows once more? Clara felt the weight of her father's gaze as she opened the article, each word seeming to reverberate with the unspoken truths of their family. The screen illuminated her face, casting a soft glow that contrasted the deepening shadows of their shared history. As the initial paragraphs unfolded, a picture began to emerge, a mosaic of their mother's past and the choices that had defined her existence. Listen to this, Clara said, her voice steady yet laced with trepidation as she read aloud. The details captured the essence of their mother's passionate pursuit for purpose, but also laid bare vulnerabilities along the fringes. An artist struggling with acclaim, personal ambitions unfulfilled, and relationships that spiraled from the weight of expectation. Clara could feel her father's pulse quicken with the revelations, anger and sorrow threading their way into his expression, fueling a tension that almost crackled in the air. Lily leaned closer, captivated by the unfolding story. This is important, she murmured, her fingers fidgeting in a need to understand. What does this mean for us? The question tore from Lily's lips as if their mother's legacy had suddenly materialized before them in all its fragility. Until that moment, the whirlwind of emotions had navigated through their father's admission of weaknesses and misunderstandings, but now it seemed they were forced to confront the real ghost of their mother, one whose artistic struggles contrasted immensely with the idea they'd held of her being a flawless figure. What do you think she would say? Clara turned toward her father, desperate to bridge the resonance of the past with the present. What should we learn from this? Her father's eyes cast downward, shielding a turbulent mixture of regret and reflection. She fought for a dream. Maybe I fought against it, he said quietly. The revelation hung between them, an admission that shook Clara to her core. It wasn't just a matter of reconciling their mother's contradictions, but recognizing their own inherited challenges in the pursuit of dreams. As Clara sifted through the layers of the article, hidden truths began to bubble to the surface. "There's a gallery show about her work right before she passed," she read, her voice trembling. "She poured herself into this while I was preoccupied with fighting for your approval, Dad." In that moment of self-realization, a beacon of clarity illuminated Clara's path. A deep desire for authenticity surged within her. She could reclaim the narrative, not only for herself, but for her family. As the intensity of the moment deepened, she felt the courage to bridge the chasms their mother's past had carved. "Maybe we can go to that gallery," she proposed with newfound determination. "We can learn more, see how she expressed herself, what captivated her. This could be a chance to finally understand." Her father's resistance shone through, but Clara was her mother's daughter. She could feel the echoes of art igniting within her. "Let's choose to honor her in a way that matters, that allows us to grieve, but also lets us celebrate the life she led," Clara urged, her heart racing. Lily's eyes brightened, embracing the idea. It felt like stepping into an uncharted territory, yet the echo of their mother's struggles urged them forward, a journey toward understanding that might finally lay the ghosts that haunted their family to rest. Their father hesitated, caught between the echoes of his past perceptions and Clara's insistence. "It's a risk, Clara," he warned, concern clouding his eyes. "Maybe it's time for risks that lead to revelations," she countered boldly, aware that they had to harness the power of the unknown in carving out their family's legacy anew. An impasse loomed, but Clara noticed a flicker of uncertainty in her father's stance. The path ahead could either deepen their connection to their mother or bring further division. As Clara placed the phone down, the room charged with the weight of uncharted emotional terrain. She felt it, something within her shifting. It was then that her phone buzzed again, a notification heralding another discovery attached to their mother's name. Clara's heart raced, a mix of dread and anticipation flowing through her veins. "We need to see what this is about," she said, locking eyes with her father, aware that this moment would irrevocably alter their narrative once more. What else would they uncover as they peeled back the layers of their mother's life? Would the risks finally lead them home? Clara's phone buzzed persistently, the notification prompting a wild mix of apprehension and excitement. She opened it to reveal an article discussing a long-lost exhibition piece from their mother, an intimate painting she had created during her most tumultuous years. The image attached was hauntingly beautiful, a raw expression of emotion that seemed to resonate beyond the canvas. Clara felt drawn in, her heart racing as she realized this was more than just a painting. It was a glimpse into their mother's soul. "Look at this," she urged, leaning toward her father and Lily, who inched closer to the glow of the screen. Each click of the article unveiled another layer of their mother's intricate life. Notes from her journal, critiques from other artists, all chronicling her struggles and triumphs. "It looks like she was wrestling with a lot more than we knew," Lily whispered, her brow furrowed in concentration as she absorbed the details. Clara recognized the spark in her sister's eyes, a shared intrigue igniting their discussion. "Yeah, and maybe we were blind to it," Clara replied, the realization settling heavily in her chest. The weight of not just their mother's history, but their own negligence pressed upon her. She fought for recognition, and we only ever saw her through our own expectations. The room fell silent, the air thick with contemplation. Clara's father stared at the screen, visibly wrestling with a barrage of emotions. It was as if he were confronting aspects of himself he had buried alongside their mother's legacy. "What are we doing here?" he finally spoke up, his voice strained. "Are we just opening old wounds? What good comes from dredging up the past?" Clara took a breath, grounding herself in her newfound resolve. "Dad, this isn't just about her anymore. It's about understanding us." Each word felt deliberate, as if she were weaving the threads of her family's narrative tightly together. "If we can't confront her struggles, how can we own our own? How can we break the cycle?" His gaze flickered, veering between defensiveness and realization. Clara knew the emotions whirling within him. He had spent years walling off his grief, denying the artistry that defined their mother, and she felt compelled to push forward. "Think about it," she pressed, sensing an opening. "Once we understand her, we can understand ourselves better. This might be the only way to heal." And with that, her father's posture shifted, his clenched fists relaxing ever so slightly. Clara sensed the subtle transformation. Beneath the thick shield of denial, seeds of curiosity were germinating. A heavy silence punctuated the air. Then, Clara's voice broke through again with purpose. "Let's find out more about this exhibition. What if we could connect with the artist community she once engaged with? Maybe there are those still around who knew her, who could share what she meant to them." Her father's brows arched, contemplating her proposition. It was evident he hadn't considered this dimension, the possibility of reaching out into the world their mother had navigated, to uncover the layers of influence she had on others. I might be able to help," he finally echoed, surprise embroiling his tone. "I could use some contacts from the old days, artists, dealers. If this means something to you both, I suppose it's worth a shot." The words felt like a bridge spanning an abyss long left untouched. The three of them lingered in that moment, united by a fragile yet palpable sense of purpose. Clara could feel the collective energy shift, a convergence of their disparate journeys converging into a shared path of exploration. "So, when do we start?" Lily asked, eager, her youthful enthusiasm breaking the tension as she pulled out her notebook. "Now," Clara answered, exhilarated by the momentum they had gained. "Let's make a list of people we need to contact." But before Clara could complete her sentence, her phone buzzed once more, revealing another notification. Glancing at the screen, her breath hitched. "It's a video," she gasped, her pulse racing as she glanced at her father and Lily. "Of her speaking at the gallery. She looks so alive." Tension hung in the air. The thought of seeing that mother, alive in spirit, yet shadowed by loss, unnerved Clara. What fresh insights could it reveal? What buried emotions would resurface? As they huddled close to watch, Clara realized this was not just a moment of discovery. It was a recalibration of their shared identity. She braced herself for what lay ahead, aware that unveiling their mother's past would demand a reckoning of their own. And then the video began. What she saw next would change everything once more. As the video played, Clara felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. Her mother appeared vibrant, passionate, eloquent, pouring her heart into every word she spoke. Watching her mother alive in those moments transformed the shadows of sorrow into beams of light. Clara saw beyond the complexities of her mother's legacy. This was the raw essence of a woman who fought fiercely for her beliefs. Her father's gaze was fixed on the screen, captivated by the animated expressions and the contagious zeal radiating from the woman he had shared his life with. For the first time, Clara recognized a shift in dynamic in her father, a deepening vulnerability that had remained concealed beneath layers of pride and anger. As the presentation continued, excerpts of her mother's struggles emerged, creating a palpable contrast to her past invisibility. Clara felt a knot in her throat, the poignant realization that her mother had navigated this world with the weight of unfulfilled aspirations and relentless tenacity. "I'm not just an artist, I'm a voice for the unheard," her mother declared in the video, and Clara's breath caught in her chest. Every syllable resonated with Clara's own journey and the ethos she had endeavored to uphold through her work as a professor. In that moment, it was clear that their mother's fight for justice was not merely a part of her legacy. It was Clara's now, too. The video reached a crescendo as their mother called on her audience, challenging them to rise beyond societal constraints and cultivate empathy through art. "Art is more than expression, it's a bridge to understanding," she proclaimed, her voice steadier than the camera that depicted her. "Let us not be bound by bloodlines, but united by shared humanity." Clara choked back tears. Seeing her mother in this light ignited a flame within her, a renewed commitment to honor this sentiment in all aspects of her life. As the video came to a close, the silence in the room felt electrifying. Clara exchanged glances with her sister, who mirrored her emotional intensity, while their father's eyes glistened with unshed tears. For the first time, there was no need for words to convey their feelings. The moments they had just shared as a family were saturated with vulnerability and understanding. The fear they had carried into this confrontation slowly dissipated, replaced with a simmering resolution to move forward. "Dad," Clara finally said, her voice unwavering, "this is who she was, a woman of immeasurable courage and complexity. We have to celebrate that, learn from it. Let's carry that legacy together." There was a palpable shift in the air, as if the very walls were responding to the release of their collective pain. Clara noted the softened expression on her father's face. It was as though a barrier had been breached. Her heart raced at the realization that they stood not only on the precipice of acknowledgement, but on the brink of something monumental, a genuine reconciliation shaped by shared understanding. I never recognized the depth of her passion," her father said, his voice a tender whisper. "I was so caught up in my fears that I stifled hers. It's time I begin to honor her memory by being the father you both deserve." As his words hung in the air, Clara felt her heart constrict with pride, yet softened with empathy. This was a pivotal moment, one fraught with uncertainty, but rich with potential for healing. "Let's create a project in her honor, a scholarship fund perhaps," Clara suggested, an idea igniting her spirit, "to help future artists achieve their dreams, just as she tried." Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement, eager to join this mission. Yes, a way to share her legacy and empower others. As they brainstormed together, Clara felt a newfound kinship with her father and sister. They were shifting from a narrative of division to one of unity, breaking the generational cycles that had tied them to silence and shame. They were developing not only a plan to honor their mother's legacy, but also redefining what it meant to be family, enduring, resilient, and most importantly, honest. Clara's heart swelled with a mix of pride and serene confidence. Each of her maternal insights enriched her academic principles. She had grown into a woman who understood the fruits of courage and vulnerability. As they gathered for an embrace, Clara beamed with a sense of solid accomplishment for herself and her family. The distance between them had narrowed, and at long last, the shadows haunting their past had begun to transform into opportunities for their future. Clara had emerged from her trials with a deepened understanding of connection beyond blood relations. It was a connection forged in love, empathy, and shared history. she stood poised to take on new challenges, determined to amplify not just her mother's legacy, but her own burgeoning voice. In that moment of clarity, she realized she had not only uncovered her mother's truth, but had also claimed her own. Clara's heart brimmed with the kind of fulfillment that surged when one becomes their truest self. She felt ready to navigate whatever lay ahead with the indelible strength coursing through her veins. Now was the time for action, to create a legacy worthy of her mother's spirit, and to embrace her own awakening. Sudden clarity washed over Clara as she proclaimed, "I'm ready for what's next." As they stepped into the future as a united front, Clara knew she had truly conquered the internal battles that had once bound her, rising as an anchor of newfound courage and love. It was only the beginning of their journey, but within her heart was the unyielding reassurance that they would be all right, together. And deep down, Clara understood. Stepping into vulnerability would fortify her resilience, crafting a lineage sewn together through love. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending for everyone to see. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.